Hello and welcome to another Milla's Game Room video, complete with gameplay footage and photos today and not my face, because I'm trying a new setup for a kind of video I don't normally do, and that is basically comparing the prices of 3DS physical games between the American region and the European region, because I've noticed with the eShop closing discourse, which the shop will now be closed by the time this video goes up, by the way. It's been very heavily Americanized, and a lot of people probably have the impression that, oh, 3DS games are so unaffordable and expensive now, when in reality that's not strictly the case when you look into other regions, and that's what I want to touch on today. So as a European, I have quite a lot of games that would be considered quote-unquote expensive in the North American region, and others that I know of that I don't have, so I say with some experience as well as going through the game store. And I even went to pick some footage together for this video, so enjoy a little bit of footage of a in-person footage from the sex shop. Seriously, it's called CEX. It has such an awful name, but you know, who cares? It's all about the content. So also, one thing I will touch on before I go into things is that I know there's things called the world variants for the North American region, where it's basically, let's take an NTSC cartridge, package it in a different box, and then just put world on it and ship it to other places like Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, and places in those regions. So apparently they're cheaper. Again, as a European, I don't know, well, I don't need world cartridges because I got European copies, but I know they're cheaper, and that does factor into some people's collecting decisions if you're in that region, so I can't talk about that, but I'm acknowledging it. Second thing I'll acknowledge, yes, piracy exists. No, this video is not about piracy or advocating piracy or anything like that. One thing I will say though is this is aimed at people who want to get the physical games. So piracy is a different topic for this video, so I don't want to see people in the comments moaning about piracy. It's just, if you want the physical games, there are more options basically. So I'm going to start by just acknowledging a couple of the common games. So New Super Bros. 2, for example, this is like around $20 now. Price has been broadly consistent, and in Europe it is a little bit cheaper, but not by much. You'll find this with a lot of the common games, but the prices are broadly the same or negligible, to the point where if you were to try to buy a PAL physical version and ship it to the US, you won't notice much of a difference. Another example is Ocarina of Time. It's about around the $25 mark in North American region, and in Europe it's around $20, so again, not much difference. Although if you were to come to Europe on a visit and pick up a copy from the shop, it will cost you around the same, so there's that to factor in too. Starting with the expensive games, I've chosen Level 5 because I know a lot of people love Level 5. I'm not really into their games, so I don't have much experience with these games, so if I don't sound like I know much about them, I don't. But I know a lot of people will go after these games, so I'm going to touch on it. Of course, we have the Yokai Watch series. The first one is the cheapest in America. It's currently around $20. It was a bit cheaper over the last 3 to 4 years. It's gone up around $20 CIB. Yeah, all the games I'm discussing will be CIB. The PAL version has always been around the $5 mark, or broadly just slightly above it now, but it's still a lot cheaper, and the trend will continue with a lot of the games in this list. So you've got Yokai Watch 2, Psychic Spectres. I went straight to this one and not do the Bony Souls, Fleshy Spirits one, because this version of the game basically combines the content of those two separate releases and a bit more on top, aka what we should have got in the first place. And this one, the North American region, is between $100 and $150. The prices broadly fluctuated a bit over the past year or so, so there's that. I'll have all these charts on screen for all of them, and you can pause and look at them. As for the PAL version, the price at the moment has been a solid like $40 or so, so this one is far cheaper, and it's unlikely to get too much more expensive. Yokai Watch 3 though, this one is well known for being among most expensive 3DS RPGs, especially the third-party locks published by Nintendo. The North American version has been around the $200 to $250 mark for a while, as you can see by the chart here. Especially in the past like 12 months, it's really spiked up, and well, it was the last third-party localization Nintendo did for the 3DS. The PAL version fares cheaper. It has actually been consistently between the $100 and $150, $60 mark. So that's not too bad. It's definitely cheaper than a North American copy, so that might be viable to look into importing if you're from that region. Now for blasters. These games are without spin-offs. It's the only spin-off game in the series we got localized, and you can kind of see they broadly have the same spike where they come out and then they started off cheap and then they got really expensive in 2022, whereas Red Cat Core broadly stayed over $300, whereas White Dog Squad went over $300 in like last summer and then spiked down to around $200, $250. Either way, they're both well over the $200-$300 mark. Way too much money, but it's, if you're gonna get a North American copy, White Dog is what you're gonna have to get. As for the PAL versions, Red Cat Core has been solidly over $50 for the past like couple of years, so not much higher than 50, 60. It's still affordable. White Dog Squad has also been, VATS has increased a bit, so it's around the $50, $60 mark now, so that's still fairly affordable. It used to be cheaper, but again, compared to the North American copy, it is the version to get if you want the game. Now on to Professor Layton. If in case you don't know, the New World of Steam game got announced for the Switch, so this has obviously brought interest in for the games that released for the 3DS. These prices aren't likely to stay as high as they are because over time the prices will go down because, well, it's just a trend. So if you're looking for the Professor Layton games at the moment, I would probably suggest not getting them now at all for any region, but I'm going to touch on it anyway because I know people want them. Miracle Mask, this is around just under $60 in the North American region, and whereas for PAL it's been $15 at the moment. It's much cheaper, but even then before it was around $10, so it's always been a lot cheaper to get it in Europe, so when the trend of wanting a new Layton games wears off, you can just get them then. Azran Legacy, this is the final game in the main series chronologically, aside from that Catriel game. This one has gone up like ridiculously because of the announcement. It is the most expensive Layton game on the 3DS. Currently over $200, nearer $250. It's a lot. And assuming assuming the price goes down after the initial trend of wanting to buy Layton, it will still be around over $100 because that's what it was in the last couple of years. Whereas Azran Legacy in Europe is about $100 now. So, and that even then, that was a very sudden spike driven by the demand from the new Layton game that was announced. So once that wears off, that will go down a bit closer to $50 like it was in the last couple of years. And now for the Phoenix Wright crossover with the Layton series. This one has been known to be expensive for some time. As of the time making this video, it's around $160 for the game. It spiked up in the last year or two, and understandably it's become quite well known among 3DS collectors as an expensive title. And apparently it's really good as well. I've not played it. As for the European release, this one has, at the time of recording, most recent one was about $88.44, but before then, for the last couple of years, it's always kind of stayed consistently around the $75 mark, so it's still more expensive, but it's still a lot cheaper compared to getting the North American copy. And final level 5 title I'm going to talk about is Fantasy Life, because again, Fantasy Life I is coming out this summer for the Switch, and this one, for North American copy, has really done like a bit of a spike in price and a dip, another spike. At the moment it's about $70.08, but consistency, the titles can be broadly summed up as like $50 to maybe $80 at the moment. It's still a lot, but in Europe it's just over like $30, around between $30 and $40, so still affordable, still much better to get than to get the American copy. So again, so far it's looking like a lot of European copies are cheaper, and in the case of level 5 it is very much true. For the case of Atlas games, however, which I'm going to touch on now, that's kind of a bit more inconsistent, and I'm going to touch on that because again, Atlas games are highly sought after. I know that firsthand as a huge fan of Atlas, and I'm going to touch them. So we've got Devil Survivor Overclocked here. This one at the moment is around $60 complete, which is reasonable for a 3DS game. It's a bit more than what it retailed for, but that's okay. Power Copy. This has been expensive for a long time because the publisher was Ghostlight Games. If anyone remembers that company, aside from the fairly ports that they do, which again, they're not really relevant anymore, but they did publish Devil Survivor Overclocked in Europe. It's more expensive, $150. I don't really recommend getting this, especially now. It does have a game-breaking bug in it, so unless you've already got the game, I would suggest not getting this version. SMT Apocalypse is another notorious example. We didn't get SMT4 physical in Europe at all, so the only physical SMT mainline game we got is this one. The North American copy is about $70 at the moment. It has kind of always fluctuated between around $110 to about $50, so that's not too bad. But in Europe, it's, well, between $100 and $250 odd, so expensive, not really viable to go after. And H1C5 is another one. This one's about fluctuating like $50 to like $60, $70. It's a lot for the game, about probably like double what it goes for. In Europe, it's a lot more expensive, around $200. This one is way too expensive, but again, it just goes to show that a lot of these titles, there are exceptions to the rule I'm talking about here. And the reason why these particular games are expensive is, I mentioned that the Overclocked was published by Ghostlight a long time ago, but the most recent games were published by Deep Silver. Because at one time Sega was like, yeah, we're not publishing these games ourselves, let's get Deep Silver to do it. And you see that. We've got Nexus as well, that was Deep Silver. This is expensive even in the US, it's about $100 in the US. And the PAL version is, I think, even more. Whereas EO Nexus has been about $150 as of late, but before that it was solidly around the $100 mark, so it's a very recent increase, so again, not surprising. But you'll notice there's a few games I've not talked about, and that's because the games I'm going to talk about now were published by NIS America. And for those who don't know, in Europe they did publish a lot of Atlas games during the system's life cycle, so it meant that they had control over the rights to it in terms of getting it printed in Europe. And in 2021 they did reprint a lot of the Atlas games they worked on, as well as other games of their own. So starting with Devil Survivor 2, because unlike the first game, NIS published a second one. As you can see, North American copy is around $60 now. The price spiked in like mid-2020 and has basically been between $50 and like $80 since. Whereas in Europe, in July, it was around $150, but has gone right down to around $50. It is affordable at the moment, so if you're looking for this game, the European copy is the one to get. Soul Hackers is another example. In America, at the moment, the price is between $50 and $100, so still a lot, but that's pretty fair. In terms of the European copy, not much like Devil Survivor 2, it got reprinted in July 2021 and went down from nearly $150 to around $50 now. And I did actually see this one, and I went to take photos for this video, and it's on the screen now. Extraordinary Untold games. So the prices for these have spiked lately. As you can see in the chart at the moment, it's like $91.66. And I believe the reason why for this is because the remaster collections, if it's coming up this June for Switch and PC, are based on the DS originals and not the Untold version. So the story mode exclusive to these games, 1 and 2, are not included, and that's why the price has gone up to like $91, whereas before it was between $25 and $50, $60, so it's a lot. But in Europe, it's actually gone down slightly from around like $75 last summer in 2021 to between $25 and $50 in 2023 because of the reprint, so that's affordable. 2 follows a very similar story. It spiked up to around $50 to $75 now, and at the moment it's like CIB $63, which is still pretty good, nowhere near as bad as the first Untold, but in Europe it's around $50 to $75, which is actually about the same, but this version will likely be affordable for a while longer because of the recent reprint, so you might want to pick this one up. But that's not limited to Atlas developed RPGs. Stellar Glow in the USA, the price has like fluctuated between like $30 to $75 for a while now, going up and down, and that's very solidly consistent. Whereas with the European version, the price has, since the reprint, gone down from just over like 75 to 80 to just over 50, so that is a bit cheaper at the moment. So it is about the same, but if it wasn't for the reprint, it would be more expensive. Again, options. Called Set Revolt now, because it is done by NIS. This price in America has gone up to like $50 plus. Yeah, they are like $70.07. Whereas in Europe it's about $40, and since the reprint last summer has been consistently around the $40 mark, so the European copy is cheaper. Although one thing I will say as a side note, the North American limited edition is actually around the same price as the complete standard edition. So if you're in America and you want the limited edition, that might be an option for you as well to get better value for money. Now onto the Dragon Quest games, and this is the one that's in the thumbnail because a lot of people, especially when I was watching videos on it, were saying it's really expensive, but mate, I'm in Europe and I can pick up these games at retail price. So North America, the price has kind of been a squiggle between, well, $50 to like $90 for a while now. It's around $80.25 at the time of this video, and that's a lot. It's around double, or at least maybe triple what the 3DS games cost, at least a few years ago, because that was like, before 2021, it was around $25. Whereas in Europe, it's around $30, $40 now, and that's been consistent for a while. So if you're in Europe, good chance to get this game. Dragon Quest VIII, which is in the thumbnail. This one in America is just over $100, complete price $111.40. Last couple of years it's fluctuated between like 75 to 130 odd, which is a fucking lot. But in Europe, as I mentioned in the thumbnail, it's around half of that, around $55. And it's been consistently that way for a while. In fact, it's actually gone down prior to last year, and it was around at one point a low of like $30. So you can go back into CX and similar places here and you could find it for that lower price. So it is definitely more affordable to get the European copy. I definitely recommend getting the European copy of this game physically. Rhythm Thief now, another example of a game, well, this has been known to be quite expensive for a while. 2022, the price at one point was well over $300, and then it spiked all the way down again and then started to go up again. At the moment it's about $250 complete, which way too much. Fantastic game, but it's way too much. Instead, you can get the European version for around $40. It's far cheaper. I got my copy. It's lovely. It's definitely worth that price. I definitely suggest getting the European version. It's much cheaper. Kid Icarus, another missed game. There are versions with the stand and the one without. I'm showing the one without the stand, which that's almost $100, and it's gone up a lot in early 2022, then down again and up again. So, you know, it's a lot. But in Europe, it's been consistently around the $40 mark for a while now. So again, European copies are one to get. Seventh Dragon 3, North American copy. It's been steadily going up the past couple of years. It used to be like $25 in start of 2020, but now it's like over $75 now. CIB $75.96. European copy of Seventh Dragon 3. It's not actually on the website, so I put it into eBay, and yeah, I'll let the screenshot speak for itself here. You ain't getting this one. So this is another one of those games where it's better to get the American copy, especially if you're wanting the first print edition with the massive art book as well, because the European version was only put inside the physical case and not the massive case. Although I will say, it's a nice art book and a great game. And finally, this is going to be the fun one I've done for, well, really fun, because let's be honest, this game is too expensive no matter where you get it. Fire Emblem Fates Special Edition. So obviously, for those who aren't aware, this version of the game is the only way to get Fire Emblem Fates Revelation physically, because it's on the cart with the other two games. And getting this CIB complete is like $636, which is absolutely fucking obscene, and I do not recommend picking up this game at all for that price. But in Europe, it's $398, so it's like a third cheaper. So it goes to show that if you're going to pick this game up, get the European version. So I hope people have appreciated a bit more, but there are options for still getting physical games for the 3DS even after shop is closed down. The broad rule here is to pick up the European copies where you can, because the scalping issue that has absolutely destroyed collecting in the United States and the Americas region markets is very much an American thing primarily, especially with America being the bastion of capitalism and resellers and scalpers being determined to sell whatever they can to make a profit in what is a living hellscape. Whereas in Europe, this issue isn't anywhere near as bad. Like, yes, there's still people that flip the games to sell, but if you're looking to collect for the 3DS now, I recommend getting European games. Especially if you come and visit, you can pick them up and it'll be much easier to get them. I'm still picking up 3DS games where I can. It's a great system. I live in Europe, so I'm getting them. And if you're up for collecting 3DS games, I would suggest doing so as well. One final thing I'll touch on, the 3DS at this point is really easy to hack, so you can hack it and remove the region lock. I believe if you hack it and download Luma or something, the lock is removed, so you can get these European games and you can play them on your North American 3DS. The reverse is also true for living in Europe, especially if you're wanting RPGs, because alongside games that are really expensive, there are games that we never got physically, like Lord of Magna Made in Heaven, 2 River City games that Natsume localized, and a bunch of others as well, like SNT4, the original game. But yeah, I could go on about that, and I hope you enjoyed this little peek into price comparisons across regions. I don't normally do videos like this. I just figured that because I've noticed this in the discourse, I'll be making a video to kind of point it out and to hopefully help people understand that there are options. Please, I encourage you to import. And if you want a physical game, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope the setup works, and stay tuned for more videos. I've got more 3DS content coming up this month. If you like the channel, like, comment, subscribe, notification bell, check the links in my description, like my coffee and my phone and my other social media platforms. Thank you so much for listening, and have a lovely day. Bye bye.